All right, so it looks like it's time to start. Are we ready? So we're so glad you're here. Welcome to Mastering the Journey. It has a professional title called Equipping Learners with Self-Regulation for Powerful Study Skills. Basically, we're going to look at some self-regulation skills, some study skills, and how we can enhance academic performance among our students. So with that, y'all know I like to jump right in. This may be a PD session unlike any you have attended before. We move pretty fast. It's a very quick 30 minutes. And with that said, let's get started. So when we think about self-regulation skills, there's a few things that come to mind. So if you Google self-regulation skills that impact learning, you're going to get several different terms, ideas. These are just 5 that I selected from research. So the first is metacognition, right? We know metacognition really refers to like those learners' awareness of your own cognitive process, right? It's a conscious effort to kind of influence and to facilitate one's own learning path. You're also going to see the term goal setting a lot in self-regulation. And we know that this takes place in the initial phase of self-regulation, but it really involves determining specific objectives that we want to meet or an objective that will guide our learning journey. Then we see that environmental structuring. This may make you think of a lot of things, but really it just is talking about finding a comfortable place to study, free from distraction, can help you focus your attention and kind of structure your surroundings so that you can really facilitate the completion of all of your learning goals and objectives. Then we talk about self-efficacy, which is just a belief and confidence in one's ability. And finally, we're going to look at social dimension or dimensioning. This is really related to that research on the constructivist view. Presley has some research that really argues that self-regulation is influenced by the social dimension, which is why it's called that, in regard to the overall learning process. He pulls research back from Vygotsky's learning theory to really talk about how learning is a social practice and that knowledge is constructed through those social interactions. So we'll look a little bit at social dimensioning. So I took about 2 minutes to introduce you to 5 self-regulation ideas or skills that impact learning or influence learning. Now, let's see what you think about these. So take your smart device, scan that QR code. I'll be dropping a link in the chat momentarily. And you're going to rank those 5 skills or ideas in order of importance. So when you look at those ideas and think about self-regulation skills, especially for those who we teach, which one is most important? Now it's going to take you to Mentimeter, and if you're on a smart device, you're going to use your finger to drag them up to the top in order of importance. On the laptop, if you choose to click on the QR code and use a laptop or desktop, you can use the mouse to rank them as well. So I'll give you just a moment to rank those self-regulation skills, is what we'll call them today. And we'll see what's going on. I'm scanning the QR code saying, I got one that says, Bob, thanks for letting us know that link's not working. Let me grab another one for you just momentarily. You can also click on that QR code there. That will get you to the same place. And let's see what we're doing. So when they rank those skills, I'll call them, or influences, it's looking like goal setting and environmental structuring are the top for this group today, followed by metacognition. This was as computer or self-efficacy, so using technology, believing in one's beliefs, believing in oneself, and then that social dimensioning. Let's keep going. I'll make sure that I'll get some other links for you too, Bob. And there we go. All right, so we just looked at self-regulation. We kind of looked at what's important to us for our students. So my name is Mandy Green. I get to be the Manager professional services, which is the greatest job in the whole world. I have the best team I get to work with. And all that means is I love professional development. I love instructional design. I love training, and I get to do all of that with GW. So we are so glad you're here today. Now, we just built a very short intro to self-regulation, because if you've been with us before, these are kind of fast-paced. We just introduce ideas and concepts for us to kind of explore a little bit, look at a little bit of research, and then you can take that back to your campus and have conversations with colleagues and do some more research on your own or implementation. So we just looked at self-regulation. Now let's switch and look a little bit at study skills. So if you look at any of the research on study skills that impact academic performance and learning, you'll find about 10 of the same concepts repeated throughout. So when we do that, some of the concepts that you'll see are time management. So this is referred to as just managing, planning, appropriate use of time. You'll also see that concentration and memory. So this really goes through concentration, about facing distractions, reducing distractions, some work into working memory. You'll see study aids and note taking as one concept. You'll see test strategies and test anxiety. Going back to that study aids, you'll also see that it's been shown by some research from 2010, which is a little bit older, that note-taking strategies for instruction had significant effects on students' academic achievement. We'll look at that a little bit further in just a moment. Then you'll find like test strategies, test anxiety. Other study skills that impact learning, you'll find things like organization and processing information. You'll find things like motivation and attitude, as well as reading comprehension. So that organization and processing information are things that we can also help with from the instructional side of instructional strategies that we use in our classroom, how we organize our information that we share or deliver to students, motivation and attitude, and then reading comprehension strategies to help our students comprehend more and fully understand what they're learning through whatever type of instruction, direct, indirect instruction that they're receiving. So that's just a snippet into some study skills. So as we think about those 8 to 10 study skills, let's now rank those of importance for our students. So when you think about your students and you think about where they need the most support for study skills, which one of those is most important? So once again, I'm going to drop that link in the chat, and then we're going to start putting this all together. So you had a brief introduction to self-regulation, a brief introduction to some study skills concepts, and then we're going to start putting all this data together. So click on that QR code and click on the link in the chat. Scan the QR code with your smart device to access the Mentimeter. This time you're doing a ranking, so you will rank it on 1 to 5, and you can slide the bar across using your finger on your smart device or the mouse on your laptop. I'll give you just a moment to get some of those done and get that QR code scanned. And then we will jump over there to see how the rankings are going for study skills. So as we rank these for study skills, looking at those study skills that we just briefly mentioned and kind of defined quickly, which ones are most important to your students? And if you have any additional comments for this section, feel free to drop those in the chat. That is the best byproduct of professional development, is that we get to learn with and from each other, because we all have really cool experiences to share that can help each other grow as educators. So if you have any comments that you want to add about your ranking, drop that in the chat and we can all read that as well. So what we're seeing here is you can see the ranking of which one's most important. So it's looking like motivation and attitude is coming in at 4.2 right now, followed by time management as well as study aids and note taking at 3.8, closely followed by comprehension at 3.7, and they're moving right now. And then organization and then test strategies, and they're moving just a little bit because this is real lifetime data. Do you see any correlations to what you see on the screen? If you do, feel free to type those in that chat box and share with us what you're noticing, because I'm noticing attitude has been one of the top skills of importance right now, and it has maintained that through this whole ranking session. Time management has been up there as well, but organization and processing information has made a quick rise at the end. So I'm curious as to why that one jumped up so much. If you have any thoughts or ideas or hypotheses, please share those in that chat box with us. We can also see now that concentration, memory, test strategies, and anxiety are towards the bottom of the ranking of importance currently. So let me check the chat box, see if we have any comments coming in just very quickly. Looks like we have a couple people typing, and I'm dying to know what they're saying. So we'll give them just a moment. Yeah, so Annette, thanks so much for sharing. So she's talking about, she teaches students that sign up for her class and overall they want to be there, which is helpful, right? But their phones get in the way of their learning. Okay, so we could look at that as maybe a possible distraction when it comes to time management, when it comes to concentration, absolutely. Bob's jumping in and says motivation and attitude are key. And there are results of positive motivation. All are a result of positive motivation and attitude. Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Looks like Annette's going to add a little bit more to hers, but as you say, it looks like everyone has voted. Things have calmed down on the board. And Annette's asking, how can we ease their test anxiety? So we'll get to that. I promise we'll get to that in just a moment. So it looks like we voted on the board. So let's jump back and think about this from a little different perspective. So we have a little bit about those 5 dimensions of self-regulation. Then we talked a little bit about some study skills. So let's start putting these together. So in the chat, share with us how study skills and self-regulation skills are related. So how do you make sense of those and their relationship to each other? And then to add on top of that, how do both of those impact learning? So I'll give you just a moment to start typing those in the chat box to share your thoughts and ideas with us. So I think of like when students have better cognitive self-regulation, they're going to have a better educational performance, right? Because they're managing their emotions, they're managing their emotional influences. They also have motivation to study and can make those targeted plans, right? There's some research about the relationship. Whoops, sorry about that. About the relationship between self-regulation and academic performance and study skills from 2018. And this research basically concluded that students, when we provide students with effective and useful tips to improve their academic achievement and performance by teaching self-regulation skills, which were those 5 dimensions that we first looked at. They think that this is the cornerstone of academic achievement in students, and it should be the way to achieve those desired educational performances and also increase their self-regulation at the same time. So I would love to see what you think about that as well. So we have a few things that are coming in the chat. And remember, this is professional development. There are no wrong answers. We are all learning with each other today. So Annette's jumping in and says, if a student is motivated and wants to be in the class, they are able to learn and want to learn. Absolutely. I've seen that as a former classroom teacher, district leader. We've seen that definitely in lots of cases that when they're in those classes. I've also kind of seen it when they're in an environment where maybe they didn't want to be in that class, especially if it was an elective and not on their career path way, that they had a harder time being motivated, but sometimes just different instructional practices of that class, or if it was a lab or hands-on class, would help them become more motivated as well. Yep. Joseph's saying that self-regulation is an important skill to have for many aspects of life. Absolutely. It's increasingly difficult for our students to develop in this instant gratification culture and maybe affect their study sessions. Absolutely. That would be some interesting research to do on self-regulation skills and the change in the culture to this instant self-gratification kind of culture. and its impacts on academic performance as well. Yeah, thanks for sharing. Let's see if we have any other comments coming in. Any other relationship comments between self-regulation, study skills, impact on learning? I don't think I see anything else being typed in right now. All right, so let's jump back to our slide deck. So now we're going to take it a little bit further. So thinking of as an educator, and you all have really great educational experiences to draw from and lots of knowledge and that you can draw from. How can you add self-regulation skills to your instruction that can help students improve study skills? So once again, I'm gonna put a link in the chat. Some days words are hard, y'all. You ever had the day where it's just like hard talking? I don't know what's going on. All right, so I'm gonna put a link in the chat to access the Mentimeter, or you can scan that QR code with your smart device on the computer screen. You're just going to type in your response. You're going to scan the QR code, click on the link, a box is going to pop up. Just type in your response. This one's completely anonymous. No one's going to know who you are. Your name's not tied to it. And just thinking about how can we use different strategies in our class to maybe help our students. You know, when I think about this, like how as an instructor can I add some of these self-regulation skills like goal setting, metacognition, environmental structuring, social dimension to my class? I really start to think about like think alouds. I think of things like my schedule, the routines that I have for my students, like how do we enter, how do we exit? I think of visual cues that I have in my classroom. Like, are there visual cues that I'm using for an instruction? Are there visual cues that I have set up around my classroom in the environment that help my students with some of these self-regulation skills? Those are some things that come to my mind. Now let's click on the link and find out what came to your mind when you think of how you can start integrating some of those self-regulation skills into your class to help our students develop those study skills that aren't always innately developed or even explicitly developed. So some ways that we can add those, encourage the use of a planner to help organize tasks to be done, to have a set routine to provide structure. Absolutely, that kind of makes me think of that AVID program. So when I was a high school counselor, we did have an AVID program. We had to go through all the AVID training, and they were big on notebooks. They were big on note-taking strategies, especially using the Cornell note-taking strategy. And so some of those routines and procedures could help our students because it's bringing in those self-regulation skills to our classroom. Also, breathe, right? So just breathe, take a breath, relax just a little. Absolutely. Maybe some of that box breathing or some of those other strategies that we know that we could use to help reduce some of those test anxiety, to reduce anxiety about goals that have been set. Absolutely. Time management. Yep. Provide them with the opportunities to see how self-regulation can get them to where they would like to be. Absolutely. That's a really great point. Goal setting, shifting activities as a routine in class. I also use time management and remind them to use it efficiently. Yes. When I think of goal setting in my classroom, I don't ever remember explicitly doing that as an instructor. I never did. But when I worked in the ed tech world and we were implementing this personalized learning system, one of their things was at the beginning of every unit, students had to write a goal. They put it on a sticky note, and that sticky note stayed on their desk during class. And then they had a big board where it went in between classes. But that was their goal for that unit or that chapter. And they had to continue to work on that. So not only were they working on writing SMART goals for themselves over time, but they were working on achieving those goals. So it kind of had twofold effect. But I wish I would have done something like that as an instructor, especially in high school. Small landmark goals with self-assessment so they can see if they're meeting a standard. Absolutely. And that goes back into also that like self-efficacy, right? So if they believe that they can achieve something or work towards something, they can see it happening. Also, they'll have those smaller landmark goals. Ask students if what they do with their personal time, when they say it out loud, they tend to then realize where they have wasted time. Absolutely. That's a really good one. Makes you, is that like a whole meta, like thinking about thinking? A specific field notebook for my classes that they share with me. Absolutely. To keep track, keeps that organization. Those are all really good ideas. All right. Any other comments? Let me check the chat real fast. All right. So hopefully you're starting to kind of get an idea about how some of these self-regulation skills that we sometimes think are real big ideas and really hard to implement into our learning environments can start to impact our students' academic performance, helping them with some study skills. But then we can now, as you can see on the screen, bring it down to a more of a realistic level of what we can do as educators. So now you have some explicit ideas that you can take back, you can try, you can share with your colleagues and have conversations about what might work in y'all's setting or might work in their setting, to share those ideas with others, to bring it down. Because if you were like me, I always went to sessions and thought, these are such big, grand ideas, and I'm not sure how I can bring them down to my little classroom. But the great thing is, as you can see on the screen, we all have really great ideas and experiences to share. And so hopefully you can take one of those ideas back and it will work for your classroom with your students and your learning environment. And then that way you can start impacting self-regulation skills, study skills, and academic performance with these ideas. So let's jump to the next slide. And there we go. So as a reminder, the certificate for today's webinar will be in the chat. We have had difficulties linking these in our new platform, just FYI. We are using a new platform in 2024. And so we are working towards getting a better solution for that. But in the meantime, grab it in the chat. It's in a Google Drive folder. So hopefully that will eliminate some issues that we've had. We had good feedback last week from that. Also, a recording from this will be emailed to the email you used to register within 24 hours. And then also that's the evaluation link. So we love to make these better. So if there's an activity that we did that you enjoyed, let us know so that we can add it to more PD sessions. And then also, today's PD session, we really brought home just a few simple self-regulation skills. We combined it with some study skills, and we talked about how there are some simple ways that we can use this in our classroom to help our students. So hopefully you got one idea that you can take back, or we reinforced one idea that you just know that you're doing really well with because other people are doing it as well. And you can take that back to your classroom. Now, we would love for you to join us again as we wrap up. This is the event for next Tuesday at the same time. It's all about differentiation, scaffolding, things that we can do in our classroom. Feel free to go ahead and register for that. The link for all of these is in the chat as well. So if you need to access the chat, the link is all in there. The links are all in there for you as well. And then with that, I'm going to say thanks so much for joining us today. We're going to give you about 5 minutes back of your time, but I'm also going to hang out and answer any questions that you have at this point in time. So feel free to drop them in the chat. And if you don't want to drop them in the chat, feel free to email me, or you can call or text. That is my work number. Several people emailed me last week after the session with just different questions and thoughts and ideas. I respond back to you. We're happy to do that as well. So with that, once again, thanks for joining us. We hope you have a great week. We'll see you next week for some differentiation ideas. And I'm going to hang out for questions. So have a good one. Michael's saying, where can I find the links to these webinars? We do have them on our YouTube page. So you can, if you're on YouTube, you can Google Goodheart-Willcox, or you can also go to our GWPD page, which I'm putting in the chat right now. And it has all of these webinars on there as well, and the on-demand library. So you can access the results there as well.